You might think that choosing a CPU for your photo editing software is simple. All you have to do is watch some of the big channels, what they say about CPU reviews, and then go for the team that, is ahead of the charts. No. If you think that Lightroom Classic and Photoshop are actually very, very similar performance because it's all photo editing, you're wrong again. In this video, I'm going to show you which ones are the best CPUs in 2025 for Adobe Lightroom Classic. This is the ultimate guide. Welcome to Tech Notice. It's so annoying. I don't want to pay hundreds of dollars to just change my Windows wallpaper just because my Windows isn't licensed. Well, why don't you try Hookies? That's a ton cheaper, and if you use the code TN20, you get it even cheaper. What do you mean? How do I get it and how is it possible? Well, see this video here, or the one you're watching? Click in the link on the video description, add the Windows 11 CD product to the cart, proceed to checkout, add the code TN20 for the extra discount. So what, the Windows 11 Pro OEM key is just $23.22? Yeah. Choose the preferred payment option and complete the purchase. The key will be available on the purchased orders in a few moments. Copy the key and paste it into your Windows activation settings, and you're all done. Oh, that was easy. Is that Ryan Gosling? No. Anyway, by the way, the same discount code also works website-wide, so go check out other products, maybe like Microsoft Office. Very importantly, if you want to check out any of my Testbench setups, how I'm testing these CPUs, I'm going to leave the link in the description below, as well as some of your favorite CPUs. They're linked below if you want to pick them up. They're affiliate links, so I get a small commission at no extra cost to you, but just so you know how this works. Also, if you do have any questions, any advice that you need quick replies, I always get back to my messages within 24 hours. So link in the description below as well. I want to start with one of the biggest confusions that are out there. When you try to install your Lightroom Classic, you might actually install Lightroom. Did you know that there's Lightroom and Lightroom Classic? They are not exactly the same thing and use your software slightly differently. In essence, Lightroom Classic uses only your local hardware and software. It doesn't store anything to the cloud. So if you've got a PC or Mac, you'll be using Lightroom Classic, and I'd recommend you to do so because it just uses everything that's locally, so you're not going to be affected by internet connection at all. Lightroom, though, at the same time offers you cloud connection with your photos, and you can connect different devices, so mobiles, iPads, tablets, PCs, laptops, desktops, everything, and connect all of your kind of libraries to the cloud. Now, the problem with that is that your actual performance may very much vary because of your internet connection, because some of the things you might edit are actually connected to the cloud and so on. Not always necessarily true, because Lightroom non-classic still uses local hardware, your CPU and RAM and so on. The cloud and internet connection is a lot more affected, and you might have issues if your device is not connected to the internet. Hence, to get the best results in showcasing which is the best CPU, we have to use Lightroom Classic to actually utilize everything locally and make internet connection none of the issues. So then, what you're seeing there is overall score, active score, and passive score. You're going to see different CPUs in there that I've tested with the latest software. And then finally, you'll see percentage, so you can kind of have an idea which one is a little bit better than the other one. Before we look at the overall score, I want to explain the active and passive scores so you understand how everything works together. So active score is when you're actually actively working with photos. So you are switching between photos to see, okay, I like this one the most. And then when you're using faders or adjusting something, you're actively kind of working with the photos. Passive score is something that the software does kind of without you actively doing something, but you're waiting for it to finish. Whether this is merging photos on a large panorama, exporting, importing, these are passive scores and passive tasks. And Lightroom Classic can utilize different hardware for that. Very important to note here is that CPU is the most important part of your Lightroom Classic hardware. The CPU will make the biggest difference. That's why choosing that correct impact for your performance. One of the first things I'm realizing is that these two on the top here are roughly around 13% faster than anything else on the chart from this. So this part here is 13% performance increase. And you can see that this is with the Intel Core Ultra. So the new Intel series are quite a bit better than the rest of the systems in here. So if you want the best performance for Lightroom Classic, Intel Core Ultra is absolutely the best in here. Bear in mind, this over here, I'm not using boost profile and a little bit slower RAM at 6400 megahertz rather than 8000, what I have here on the Core Ultra 9. So you might get a little bit of a better performance of this here as well, but that's only if you apply the boost profile. Then I would say there is kind of this top secondary batch of CPUs, and these CPUs are roughly within kind of 5% of each other, and they perform very, very similar, but they're kind of a little bit behind of the main pack of CPUs right on the top there. Interestingly, this is very, very fascinating. What we have here is the Ultra 5 235, which is very, very budget CPU. And then secondly, we have the Ryzen 9 9950X 3D, which is one of the most expensive mainstream CPUs you could get. They're performing kind of 2-3% of each other, which just shows that Intel on Lightroom Classic, just for your money, offers a lot more performance. So this is the overall score. Interestingly, the 9800X3D, which we have right over there, which is slightly faster than the 9950X, showcasing that perhaps the 3D V-Cache actually does make a difference here in Lightroom Classic. Then I would say this part here is the mid pack. And interestingly, look at this, the 14600K, which we have over here, and then the 9950X. They're again, very small margin of difference in here, but yet large price difference. And then the bottom section here, I can see that the 9900X is performing pretty much exactly the same as 13600K. Again, very, very different price points of CPUs, yet very, very similar overall performance. On the very bottom, what you can see here is Threadripper. And Threadripper for Lightroom Classic overall score really isn't meant for that. This is the 96 cores, and then obviously Lightroom Classic doesn't know what to do with that many cores and threads, so it's not necessarily worth it. Yet there are workflows where Threadripper makes sense, so stick around till the end of the video. I'll explain that in a bit. Next, we're going to be looking at the passive scores. So passive is where we actually exporting, or remember what passive score meant here. Interestingly, we're seeing that the Core Ultra 9 that was on top of the charts isn't on top of the charts anymore. It's just kind of right in the middle there, and there's two on the very top there much higher than anything else, the 14900K and 265K, and they're roughly about 13% better than the rest of them. You can see that all of the top of the charts here is Intel, and then on the bottom we have AMD, which just again shows that the passive scores, even though multi-threaded performance is amazing at the 9950X or Threadripper in here, it doesn't necessarily perform that well in here. This result right in here really boggles my mind. I don't know why this is kind of there. It should be a little bit higher, somewhere around there. And then also the 235 here performs very, very well. Interestingly, slightly lower than the 14600K compared to these two there. Again, very, very good option for your money right in there. And can you believe that the 235 Ultra 5 is faster than 9950X 3D, 9950X we've got in there. These are so much more expensive CPUs. Interesting. Now moving on to active scores, we've seen very, very similar thing. Intel is right on the top of the charts, and then bottom one is AMD. The active score isn't that different there. So basically all the Intel, the lowest Intel here, 235, here is 11%. So the difference between from the bottom one to the top is 11%. So not that much difference, which is actually good news. So whether you go with the 235 or the Boost Core Ultra 285K, you're not going to see that much difference between when actually working with photos and moving faders and things like that. That's amazing. And even when going with AMD, it's not that much smaller. Like the absolute lowest of 7800X 3D is only 20% slower than the best of Intel. Yet the best of AMD 9950X in here, this is the 3D version, actually is 13% slower. So all of the AMD really perform very, very similar as well, again within 5%. So that shows that Intel is slightly better at working with photos. AMD is a little bit behind, but not that much different. As you can see from this, Intel is quite a bit better for Lightroom Classic. If you remember our Photoshop workflow and who was better in Photoshop, it was kind of very, very much different. AMD was right on the top, and then Intel was very much in the bottom. So here with photo editing workflow, when we've got Lightroom Classic and Photoshop, you think, okay, I'm going to go with one or the other because they're very similar. Actually, these softwares utilize the hardware completely differently. So let's talk about these little eggs or exemptions in this case. One of them is Threadripper. When would you need a Threadripper? Do you need a Threadripper? There are workflows where Threadripper does make sense. Not this 96 core, but let's say the 32 core or 64 core. Because if you are in a workflow where you import thousands of photos, they're raw, and then you export them to JPEG, then the Threadripper is really, really good at doing that. And I know people who just go with Threadripper systems because that is the main workflow and that's what they need. They need lots of RAM and so on. So it might make sense for you if that is specifically for you. If you're a freelance photographer where you're doing a lot of weddings and corporate and portraits and other shoots, and you're working actively with photos, going with any of the Intel systems, it just works for you. It's absolutely amazing. Now, you might be saying, what about GPU? Very good question. Even though GPU doesn't affect most of this workflow as much as you might think, there are certain things in Lightroom Classic that do require GPU. So if you do in any of the AI effects like background detection, sky removal, object detection, blah, 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 then some of these can be accelerated on the GPU. And the best GPU to do that is NVIDIA GPUs. They're a lot better at doing that. Now, you don't need to go with a high end. The mid-range will be overkill for you. Absolutely, you don't need more than that. If you're doing other things as well, I think a very good sweet spot if you have money to spend is the 5070 Ti, a little bit more VRAM, and if you need anything else doing like some video editing, it's going to be amazing GPU for that. So highly recommend checking that one out. So now then, if you want to build yourself an actual creative PC, go check out some of my build guides in the video description below and then follow them right there. If you have any other questions, leave a comment below. We'll get them answered. If you are in a rush to get your comment answered, always reach out at midnight. I'll get back to those messages a lot faster than the comments. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.